everyone, welcome to Panic and Me. I'm Dama.
And I'm Olivia, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about behavioural activation. But before we go into that, we should probably explain how we were apart, together, and now apart and now together again. So basically I'm visiting Dama now that restrictions allow in Bournemouth, which has been quite fun.
Yeah.
We went for a Thai massage today, which was really good. We had to phone up
10 places.
So many, probably 15.
Yeah.
To find one that would do a couples massage, basically, two together in a room. And we had one place that said they could, and then we turned up, and it was 2 separate rooms. And Dama's social anxiety went sky high, didn't it?
Uh-huh.
So they had to drag another bed so that we could be in the same room. But it was really good.
Yes.
So
today we will be talking about behavioural activation, and Olivia is going to explain what that is.
Yeah, so I think I'll be leading this a little bit because I've actually done this as therapy. And Dama doesn't know too much about behavioural activation, so she'll be learning along with you, really. So I done behavioural activation, I think back in January-ish time, when I first started showing signs of low mood. So behavioural activation is a CBT-based therapy, but it's called step 2. Which means it's a low intensity kind of therapy, right? So do you know the stepped model of therapy?
No.
So the stepped, so when you first go into mental health services, presenting with an issue, right? You start at step 1, which is just general GP, and you do what's called watchful waiting, where they might watch to see if your low mood gets better.
Right.
But because mine had been persisting for a couple of months at that period, I skipped step 1. And then you go into step 2, which was your group therapy was a step 2 intervention, and my behavioural activation was a step 2 intervention. I'm now on the waiting list for a step 3 intervention, which is a high intensity therapy, basically, because the behavioural activation didn't solve the problems.
Yeah.
But that being said, it didn't solve all my problems, but it is a really helpful coping mechanism, and that's why I thought we'd talk about it today. Right. So the first thing you've got to do when you do behavioural activation, because you can do this by yourself, it's obviously helpful with a therapist, but behavioural activation is so easy, you can basically do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Because the idea is that when you've got low mood, you want to do less.
Yeah,
and then less and less. And then how does that make you feel? Worse, right?
Yeah.
So it tries to step up your energy and therefore your mood. And that's kind of the logic behind it. So in your first, so you go to a session and you'll just talk, and they'll explain basically these basic concepts about how it works. And then there's usually a 2-week-ish gap between therapy sessions. Most of it is very self-motivation, this therapy.
Yeah.
And for the first 2 weeks, you're supposed to keep what's called an activity log.
Oh, right.
So you write down when you wake up, when you go to sleep, what you eat, what you're doing throughout the day. You usually write down the 2 main activities you were doing in the morning, 2 main activities you were doing in the afternoon, and 2 main activities you were doing in the evening, right?
Yeah.
And you start to see kind of patterns in your behaviour, in your days,
Since you write it all down and it just becomes more clear on paper.
Yeah, how you're spending your time. And then sometimes you realise, oh my god, I'm actually taking loads of naps, or I spend loads of time in front of the TV, or you find that, I do loads in the morning, but then I get tired by evening or whatever.
Yeah.
So you do that, and then the next fortnight, you put these different activities that you've done in your plan into 4 different categories, which see if I can remember them, but it's essential, routine, pleasurable. I think it's just those 3. It's just those 3 categories. So routine is things like brushing your teeth, brushing your hair, something you do every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like routine. Essential is like, I don't know, you've got to MOT your car or something like that. And then pleasurable is obviously things you enjoy doing, right?
Yeah.
And what was like really striking to me when I'd done this was I was doing loads of routine and essential stuff, but very little pleasurable stuff.
Yes, yes.
And that's where you start feeling like
down,
right? So what activities are like pleasurable for you, for example, that you might be doing in a week? Or that you don't do even?
Like art or photography, something creative. Yeah. That doesn't feel like a burden. I just can enjoy doing it.
Yeah, so like a personal project. So like an essential task might be like doing photography for your degree, but that doesn't count as pleasurable.
Yeah.
So then when you see how this balance is, you might also find that you're doing loads of pleasurable things. For example, like playing video games all the time and no routine or essential things. And that's also why you're going to be feeling bad, right? Because if you're not washing.
Yeah.
So it's about a balance. But for me, I was missing the pleasurable stuff. So when you see it on paper, you're like, okay. Your therapist goes, you need to plan activities for the next 2 weeks. So for example, in my first week, it was literally like in the mornings, I'm going to brush my teeth every morning because I was like forgetting to brush my teeth, and then go for a walk twice a week for 30 minutes because I really, really enjoy walks, and have a video call with Damon on Saturday or something like that. And I would schedule that in, and the idea is you have to do those activities, right? Because they're supposed to make you feel better.
Yeah.
And then but every week you schedule in more, or you schedule in more intense activities. And you build up like that, so it's a step.
You build it up, okay.
Yeah.
But how do you build up from like some like walking to something more intense?
So it's not necessary. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same thing. So I might schedule in walking because that's a pleasurable activity I find easy. But you know, it might be like video games is a pleasurable activity I find harder.
Yeah.
Because it's about concentration.
Like that,
it's not like physical intensity, if that makes sense.
It's just pleasurable in what sort of difficulty it is.
Yeah. So you actually list them as well. I forgot to say, in least difficult to most difficult in each category.
And then you work your way up.
Like a hierarchy of fears.
Yes.
Ish kind of thing. And you work through it like that, and it's like a really good motivation. So what kind of things might you? So if you think now, obviously without writing down, do you think you have a good balance across the 3 categories, or do you think you veer too much?
Thinking about it, I probably should do more pleasurable.
Yeah. So you spend a lot of your time working.
Yeah. Not enough pleasurable or relaxing.
Yeah, same, but relaxing stuff comes under like pleasurable, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of things like might you commit to doing, for example, that would bring you more joy? I know you said about creative stuff, but like maybe other things as well.
So I want to get back into like exercise.
Yeah, that's good. That can be in. It depends, right? For some people, these categories might be different as well. For some people, they might be in routine. Yeah. Because they don't really enjoy exercise, but they should do it. But like for you, I know it's a pleasurable thing, right?
So I would want it to be pleasurable. Get back into that. Maybe get back into art and painting. Yeah. Because I've been doing photography. I haven't done enough art, and I love it so much. But it takes up a lot of time and a lot of skill, and that's where you grow. And because I've been putting it off for because it takes time, so you know.
Yeah. But it's the idea of like saying next Wednesday I will paint, and just making sure that you do it. And but this is like a longer term approach. But in the smaller way, you can literally just say, you know, I need to have more fun things in my life. So this is a non-negotiable. I don't care if a work meeting comes up, you know, or anything. I don't care if I'm called into work. It was like today, right? Today, me and Dame were like with the massage and everything. And boss called her into work, and she was like, oh, do I go? Do I not? And then you decided not to, right, in the end, because that time should be non-negotiable. Yeah. That pleasurable time should be non-negotiable as well.
By the way, my boss is amazing, so...
Yeah, of course. He's got a nice boss, and she enjoys her work. Obviously, she needs time to relax as well. Yeah. It's just an example, obviously.
Yes.
But yeah, so I think that's like everything really about behavioural activation. Do you have any? Yeah, I was going to say, do you have any questions?
So, you said walking. Then what would it be next? It's video games.
So for me, no. So actually, video games was top of my difficulty.
Yeah.
Because there was just something about learning how to do it all again.
Yeah.
Concentrating was really high. So on my pleasurable list, I think right at the bottom was like walking, because it was easy for me. Because it wasn't the physical exercise that was. It was more like concentrating and mental energy that was difficult for me at the time, because I was giving so much mental energy to my degree and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then, you know, like maybe I think like the next one was maybe Call You, because that wasn't too stressful, you know, 30-minute call with Dama or something like that.
Yeah.
Then the next thing would be like a quiz night with my boys, like my friends from university, because that was a bit more strenuous, but still not like too bad. And then it was like read a book, you know, it was further up, and then like go on a date night with Lewis was further up than that, and then like video games was right at the top.
Yeah.
Basically. So I was given 8 sessions of behavioural activation, but I did actually drop out after 5. So when I got to 5, one part of me felt like I can kind of do this on my own now. I don't really need to meet with a therapist every 2 weeks. And also, like, it wasn't really solving all of my issues, behavioural activation. I just see it like one skill.
And you've nailed it.
And I feel like I've nailed that skill.
Yeah.
Whereas like CBT therapy, because I'm on like the waiting list for the step 3, is more like proper, all-inclusive. So it's just one little skill, and it's a good one, but it didn't work for me as just a standalone therapy.
So do you recommend to people watching this to do this?
What, to do behavioural activation as therapy?
And stick it through? Or like any advice that, you know?
It's really hard. So I think that behavioural activation, if you have mild or moderate depression or low mood, that's not very prolonged, or if you feel like your low mood is because of low activity, then it's a good therapy. But I feel like my depression wasn't because I wasn't doing loads, although it did help me sort out the balance in my life and all of that. That wasn't actually the core cause of my low mood. So I think that's why it didn't like sit with me so well. But you know, if people have lost, for example, like if somebody's been really ill, they get a little bit better and then they feel really low, that might be because of low low activity in general. Then that therapy would be really good. But the NICE guidelines, so that's like the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, they say that the scientific evidence for behavioural activation as a therapy is a bit ropey. So it's not as good or replicable as CBT.
Right.
So it's like, obviously, if you're offered it on the NHS, I'd suggest you take anything you're offered and at least give it a try and at least stick it out. You know, I stuck it out for 5 sessions. Because the first 2 are like introductory sessions, and then after 3 weeks of planning, I kind of felt like I could do the last 3 on my own. But I'm very like that anyway. And if you feel like after 3 weeks you talk to the one thing I made a mistake though is I didn't tell my therapist that like, oh, this isn't really working, and I'm gonna like go on. I want to look for some other support. So if you did like do 5, I would at least give it 5 weeks. But if you did do 5 weeks and then you're like, this isn't really helping, at least talk to your therapist about it, because that's a mistake I made.
A lot of people are scared to talk to their therapists though about like dropping out or saying, look, this isn't working for me, or I want another therapist, but the therapist will understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And because behavioural activation specifically has got like ropey science behind it, they're even less likely to be like, the more understanding, right? It's not working. Well, it doesn't actually work for everyone. That's recognised with behavioural activation. And if you're having like a severe profile of depression, or you really don't feel like something like that will help, and it's okay like initially before you even start to push for, you know, step 3 intense therapy, for example,
Yeah.
or just something a little bit different, or maybe that alongside counselling, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just be honest with your therapist. They're really not going to take it personally. They'd rather you just talk to them than drop out.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a mistake I made. I get it's hard.
Yeah.
But it's their job, and you're like one of probably like 50 clients they have. So, you know, they're not going to take it personally. It's good to take ownership over your own like mental health journey.
Definitely. Yeah. So thank you for watching, and see you in our next video.
Yeah, see you in the next video. Like, subscribe, share the video, please. It would be great.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.